ITU's Fred Werner. Great to see you back here on GZERO.
Thanks for having me again. It's amazing. I can't believe it's only been a year since we last spoke.
It has been a year, but what a year it's been. And this has really, AI for Good has been your baby since 2017. A lot has changed in a year, and even more has changed in nearly a decade. What has surprised you the most about the trajectory this conversation has taken?
Yeah, it's a great question. And you know, when we created AI for Good in 2017, it was all about the fear, the hype, and the promise of AI. But there wasn't a whole lot of substance, really. The technology just wasn't there. As it turned out, the technology came around 2023, right? But that didn't prevent us from starting to think, what are the AI use cases that could solve global challenges like healthcare, education, disaster response, and what kind of standards would be needed to support those use cases? And most importantly, how can we make sure that we don't create an even deeper divide or an AI divide, so to speak?
Right, which brings me to, I was thinking about this walking over here, that if there were an AI drinking game, the word diffusion would get you pretty buzzed pretty quickly. And you know, of course, we're talking about who's using AI and who's not globally, but is that sort of an oversimplification of the issue right now in terms of how AI is being adopted?
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I think you and I were both at the India Summit in New Delhi a while back, and AI diffusion was the word of the day. And if you look at the trajectory of AI for Good, we've really gone from the use cases, which I called marketing slides, to the advent of Gen AI and the LLMs. Last year it was all about the AI agents. And I think now we're basically entering what I would call a zero-click world, where agents are not waiting for clicks and prompts, but they're acting on our behalf. But when we're looking at, you know, all of these sort of frontier technologies, and they're all around us, like advanced robotics, brain-computer interfaces. We've been talking about space computing now, like data centers in space. But I think it's great to be ambitious and go to space, but we also have to get our feet back down on Earth, right? And that brings me to Edge AI, where you can bring intelligence to communities, underserved communities that need it the most. And one of the sessions we had in India was all about Edge AI, where you don't necessarily need the, you know, a big super data center or like the most advanced AI to get most of the benefits of AI. You can have Edge AI, sort of a native AI on devices, using you know, tiny ML to capture things locally, and basically help to create local problems, or rather local solutions to local problems.
Yeah, so you're referring to what I've heard called small AI, device-based or suitcase-sized compute. Now, that sounds very exciting in the sense that it has the potential to help countries that are not already that developed in AI leapfrog. But how does it play into this other main conversation that's happening lately around sovereignty and control of data?
Yeah. So I like to think of what happened in East Africa a while back. So in East Africa, they effectively leapfrogged decades of legacy telecommunications infrastructure, jumping straight to the mobile device and using it for mobile payments, right? And then they, with M-Pesa and digital ID, and then became leaders in the world, and just out of necessity. And there might be an opportunity to have a similar leapfrog effect with AI and AI agents on phones in Africa, where you don't need 30 years of legacy infrastructure development and data centers and all the things that we've developed in the sort of developed world, if you will. And just to tell you a story, last year we were in Johannesburg for AI Impact Africa, and there was a guy called Lucky who's writing a book on AI in the townships. And I asked him, Lucky, you know, how many people in the townships actually have like a mobile phone which would be connected to, you know, 4G or 5G, access to LLMs? And he's like, well, probably about 80% of the people. So that's actually already a leapfrog in itself. But when we started discussing, you can't take it for granted that just by putting a device in the hand with an LLM and it's going to be used for good. And that's where you get the skilling part and the data part, because you want these solutions to work well for local communities, create value, create collaboration, and you just put it in the hands out of the box with some pre-installed software, whether it's from Silicon or Shenzhen. That's not going to help the local environment.
Yeah, you know, I want to touch on something you said that I think is very important for people to understand, because we've often viewed this through the lens of connectivity, and we throw out statistics like there are 700 million people on the planet that don't have electricity and 2 billion not using the internet. But you look at a country, let's look at Sierra Leone, for example. Actually, 97% of the country has 3G ability and coverage. The problem is not enough people have the devices. So to what extent is ITU also working on that part of the problem, that the right tools are in the right hands?
Yeah, I mean, like the coverage, like you said, that's getting better and better, right? But what good is coverage if there's no incentive to connect? So if there's no content in your local language or dialect, or if you're illiterate, or if you have disabilities, or maybe it's just the technology on your phone isn't good enough. And I think that's where AI can actually help to reduce a lot of the friction by basically translating content, providing interpretation, speech to text, text to speech, but also just using audio. Like even if you're illiterate, with an AI agent, you should be able to interface with a device, ideally in your local dialect. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done there to reduce that friction, and I think AI is one of the tools that can reduce the friction. And just to give you an idea, at AI for Good, we do hundreds of machine learning challenges, and one of our challenges is basically using AI to create language sets to increase the performance of small language models in different African languages in Africa. So work needs to be done, but that's some of the work that AI for the Good and ITU is doing.
Yeah, so does it concern you when we say AI for good that there are a lot of people, a growing number really, when you look at polling, particularly in the most developed countries, that are saying, is it for good or is it going to do more harm than good? The pessimism is increasing. Is that justified, or do you think that the narrative has gotten a little bit out of control?
Yeah, it's interesting because I have the privilege of traveling around the world most of the year and interacting with different communities on the topic of AI. And indeed, I think the sentiment in the West, in the US and Europe, is actually very, very low, and getting lower and lower. There's concerns about job loss, about the environmental impact of massive data centers using up water, pollution, electricity. There's concerns about security and privacy. But interestingly enough, when you go to, let's say, Africa or India, there's a lot of optimism. I mean, they're seeing it as a way out, as a tool to leapfrog, to create businesses, to create value. And maybe they don't have the luxury of worrying about some of the concerns that are being raised in the West. I don't think it's an either or situation. I think that the concerns are very valid and need to be addressed. But also for many parts of the world, there's a sense of optimism. I should say in China as well, it's more positive than negative. But I think in the West, it's more negative than positive. But one of the roles of the summit is actually to highlight the good part. I think there's a lot of discourse narrative on the for bad. I think there should be a place for good, and there's actually not a whole lot of places apart from AI for Good where you can talk about how will AI cure cancer or solve the energy crisis or predict disasters and all the use cases that you see around you. So to use a Swiss analogy, if you're learning how to ski, right, the first thing your instructor will say, where you look is where you go. So if you keep looking at the tree because you're scared to crash into a tree, chances are you're going to end up into the tree. So I like to think of AI for Good as helping us to nudge us a little bit in the good direction, because where you look is where you go. Okay,
well, lastly, nudge us in the right direction. We're here, hundreds of exhibits happening around me. Thousands of people will be here this week for this conference. What are you most excited about?
Yeah, first of all, right behind us, we have the kids, right? So we have our Global Robotics for Good youth competition. Last year we had about 25 countries. Now we're about 50, 700 kids using AI and robotics to tackle food security. These are kids aged 10 to 18 already thinking about how can we solve one global challenge in a responsible way using AI and robotics. So I like to think that's sort of addressing the youth area, right? Then we have what I call the machine learning challenges, which are around you as well. That's targeting the university age students, they're not students, they're adults, teams, really solving very difficult problems using machine learning. Anything from landslide detection to predicting disasters to crop monitoring, you name it, we have hundreds of them. And then we have what we call the innovation factory. So there you're targeting maybe the 25-year-olds plus who are creating businesses and actually have valid solutions that you can use here and now today. And last, you have the ITU UN delegations talking about standards and policy and the future. So I like to think we're covering the full spectrum and that they're all here today.
Fred Werner, best of luck this week, and thank you for stopping by.
Thanks so much. Anytime. Thanks, Tony.
Great to see you.